In my previous video, we tried to find the best model for image analysis. Now let's continue our journey and keep exploring the best coding assistant. Because there are so many models out there, this video will only be dedicated to compare all the closed paid models. So the model of choices we have is GPT 3.5, which is where all this LLM revolution begins 2 years ago. So I want to have that in the battle to have a good comparison with the past. Then we have GPT 4o, the best model from OpenAI. Then we have Gemini 1.5, both Flash and Pro. And lastly, the Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which also came on par on last video when we select the best image analysis model. This video, we are not gonna include Microsoft. I don't think it's relevant anymore. It's just use GPT-4, so we'll skip that. In terms of the testing methods, we're gonna have two tests, a single prompt test and a multi-steps prompt test. For the single prompt, we're gonna use a single prompt to ask it to create a voice-enabled chatbot. So think about a ChatGPT, but with voice enabled. You can speak to it, and it will play back with the response. On social media, a lot of people like to show off these new models with creating a snake game or some basic simple game. Well, number one, we're not gonna use that because it's very subjective what they're gonna create. So it's hard to compare or judge. And also these simple games are probably in their these models data training data set. So it's not much practical use doing this kind of test. In the test one, because we are using three different models, OpenAI, Google, Gemini, and Claude, we're gonna only tell the chatbot that what LLM they're gonna use. So they're gonna use their own LLM. I will not mention what the STT, the speech to text or text to speech module or tools they should use. So let the model work it out what they're gonna use. For the multi-steps test, we're gonna ask it to create a local RAG solution. So the way we stage it is we'll ask it to do different things each step. First, we'll ask it to create a text-based chatbot with no UI, and then we'll add a Streamlit UI to the chatbot. And then lastly, we'll ask it to turn to a RAG solution using LangChain, and that's gonna be used for PDF files only. Now, for the test one, because it's single prompt, we are not gonna provide any documents or any files. Just one single prompt tells what to create. In the test two, we will provide, since not all models have access to the internet, we will provide the required documentations when it's needed to create a Streamlit interface, for example, or also some LangChain documents, just to bring each model onto the similar stage. Now, the way we judge the test number two is, for each step, we'll give it three chances. So if spit out something doesn't work, we ask to modify based on the error. For each step, we will score 1 point and we'll give it 3 chances. If after 3 runs, they didn't build anything that usable, we will not continue because just for the length of the video. So the first model in the test one is our OG GPT 3.5 Turbo. This is the latest 0125 model we're gonna use. Now, because you can't use this model anymore in ChatGPT app, we have it running in our Streamlit app we built in the past if you watched my other video. So this is the app. We just changed the model to the GPT 3.5 Turbo 0125 and we're gonna run it. So essentially, this is something we are looking for this model to build in the end. Okay, so don't worry about this naming. I think I didn't save it, so let's save this. I've changed title to the GPT. Now let's try that again. The script names remain the same. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so here's our prompt, which I will copy from here. That's our next test. So we are testing number 1, single long prompt with GPT 3.5 Turbo. Create a voice enabled chatbot with GPT 4o. So this one we should be with GPT 3.5 Turbo. As I said at the beginning, they're gonna use their own models, just to be fair. In a single Python script, both STT speech to text and text to speech is required. User will use keyboard to activate the voice recording using Ctrl+Shift+X. The IDE, the development environment, is VS Code, and all API keys will be provided via the .env file under the same directory. Please make it cross-platform. Okay, so let's see what it does. Go send. Okay, so remember this test 1 is a single prompt only. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So this script uses pyttsx, which is common, quite popular, but also old Python library for text-to-speech. And speech recognition, it does both. Oh no, the speech recognition library for speech-to-text, okay? It also utilizes keyboard library to handle the keyboard shortcuts. Very good. OpenAI API keys loaded via this. Okay, so very simple script. Let's copy that and find out whether it works or not. So as you can see, I have already created an empty file for the GPT 3.5 for our test 1, the single prompt. Let's copy the code it generated. So click on copy. We'll paste here, save it, and run it. Okay, so this is no Streamlit, no interface, so we can just run it. We just need to install additional libraries, which I think is okay. Okay, let's do that. So this terminal here is still running our chat GPT of 3.5. So let's leave that and go add a new terminal. Okay, so what we're gonna do is just install the library real quick. Pip install, the library name is that, and I hope that's the name. Let's just see what happens. Okay, I just asked ChatGPT 3.5 the library name, so without space. Okay, let's do that. We should still consider this is single prompt. I'm just asking the library name, so that shouldn't count. So let's install that, and we will run the script again. Now it has completed a library that's required, and you can see these errors are gone. So let's run it and see what happens. Okay, we got error. What is the error? Exceptions. Okay, so we're gonna copy the error into the ChatGPT asking what this error is about. But we already know this model has failed this single prompt test. It didn't run for some whatever reason. But let's have a look at the reason and make assessments. So we copy the error, and then we're gonna go back to this. I receive the following error. Please explain. So if this error is caused by my setup, then it's not ChatGPT's fault, right? It's my own fault. I didn't set up the environment properly. But if it's a code error, then we say this test 1, it has failed the test. So here we go. The error message indicates the character X is used in the keyboard is not recognized by the keyboard library. This is likely to cause result. You can modify the keyboard shortcut to use a key that is recognized by a library. Okay, replace this with that. I say this error is, it should not fail our test because it's my fault to telling you use a key that's not supported by the keyboard. But you can also argue that it didn't warn me because it knows which library it's gonna use, right? It uses the keyboard library, so it should have warned me that this might not work. I think that we could give it a pass. Okay, so let's change that and run it again. If it still fails, then I say it failed the test 1. Okay, I have cleared this output, and we'll change this to A, and let's run it again. So we'll run that. Oh, that's the error again. Key A is not mapped to any known key. Let's ask this question. So it definitely is not going to be a pass on this one. I got another error with A. What it says seems that A is also not recognized by a keyboard library system, resulting in another error. Okay, let's move on to the next model. Let's say this has failed. And also each model was told to create this app using its own LLM. Like you can see here, the GPT 3.5 referred to the old model, DaVinci. It's not even correct spelling. It's supposed to be DaVinci 003, right? And also because using the refer to the old model is using the wrong endpoint. The new endpoint is chat, not text completion. You got the response. If we change to 003, it will probably work. And this looks alright. Next up for the test one single prompt is our GPT-4o. I'm using the ChatGPT app, so same prompt. Let's run it. And as you can see, I also have created a empty file ready to go. So let's say creating a voice-enabled chatbot with GPT-4 that supports both text-to-speech to text and text-to-speech require integrating several services. Okay, so it's also using the speech recognition for the STT, so it's using the libraries. This is pretty much the same answer as the ChatGPT 3.5. The script will be activated with this same keystroke, which I haven't changed because I know it works with my other app. And it also actually tells you this worked with a keyboard module. So there's a bit of a hallucinating there in the last ChatGPT 3.5. But from my experience, the 3.5 actually got really close. It's just some keyboard error. I say it got 90% close. Right, so this one is more clear. It gives you all these libraries, and then here's the full code. All right, so let's try that. Single prompt test for GPT-4o. We'll paste that and we'll run it. Okay, is it running? Let's see what happens. Okay, we got error. Now, name objc is not defined. Where did it say in the app? JC, there's no OB. What does that mean? So let's copy the error and we will ask GPT-4o. So let's understand the error first and then we make a assessment. Go back to this. I receive the following error. Please explain. Okay, now let's just make sure we are using the GPT-4o, which is good. Okay, let's have a look at the error. It's because this library on macOS depending on another library, which is not installed by default. An SSS driver used by that requires this library to interact. Okay, so we just need to install that. So can I say if we had a library already installed and this script could work? So let's give it a pass as well. We'll install this library and then we'll try to run this script again. So we'll go back to our terminal, we'll clear that, install the library. Aha, I already see the problem, right? It says already satisfied. Looks like we already have the library. So that will not be the issue. But let's just copy this again. Maybe I'm cheating because I copied it again. Who knows, maybe it made some changes in the script. Let's see, but I don't think it's gonna work. So clear terminal, run the script, and waiting for some errors to pop up. Okay, so same thing, object and SSD. Right, so it also failed GPT-4 on this single prompt. And the problem most likely is the choice of libraries for either the text-to-speech and speech-to-text. And I know it will probably work if I given a clearer instructions on maybe use a whisper, right? But that's not the point. Because for people who don't know how to code, they probably don't know what library to use, right? So let's move on. Also, same here, each model was told to use their own LLM with the GPT-4o. Now you can see it did not use the correct model. It didn't use itself, it used DaVinci 003. Thus is using the wrong endpoint, the old text completion endpoint. The new endpoint should be a chat endpoint. The rest looks okay. So that, it didn't get it right. Next one up is Gemini 1.5 Flash. Now I've paid this subscription, so if you use Gemini, it's 1.5 Flash, and if you go advanced, is 1.5 Pro. So let's try the Gemini 1.5 Flash with the same prompt and see what it does. Okay, I'm glad to create response that incorporates strengths of response A and B. What? What is response A and B? Address the shortcomings. What is response A and B? So confusing. However, due to limitation concerning disclosing Sonnet API and potential policy violations, I will provide a refined code structure. What the hell is this model doing? While Gemini 1.5 Flash might not be officially supported across all platforms, we can explore cross-platform libraries. Okay. This is confusing to start with. So many disclaimers. Why so many disclaimers? Just write the code. Okay, let's copy this and put it in, see what happens. So you can see we have a blank script. We'll paste that in. Okay, so first we're gonna install the library for that because we don't have it. And then what other errors we may have? Let's have a look. Looking good. Process user input. And this one is not defined. Replace with your Gemini integration. What does that mean? So if we have just look at these docs from Google, to use the Flash model Gemini, first you're gonna initialize model, right? You're gonna use this, and then this is how you get the response. So response is equal to model.generate under content. That's the endpoint you're gonna use, and that's how you're gonna use it. Now we specifically told our Gemini to create a script using Gemini model, and it didn't even do it. The response is completely left out. And not only that, do you see anywhere it has initialized the model? Not at all, right? There is no mention about the model, and worst of all, it didn't even import the Google Cloud in here, right? This is the requirement. You have to import the Google libraries. It didn't even do that. And also it didn't initialize the model, and of course the response was completely wrong. It left for me to do. Well, that's the point. I'm asking you to create a script. And if you have a look at this response, right? It says import libraries. Import necessary library for speech recognition, text to speech, and potentially keyboard shortcuts. Well, wouldn't be the most important library to import is the Gen AI library instead of all the others. So I'm sorry, Flash, this is a complete fail. Okay, next let's move on to the Gemini 1.5 Pro. I just realized I copied the code, the Flash code, into the wrong file. So that's okay, that's just a name. So we'll copy this out and put it back to our Flash script file. We already tested this, so that's fine. Let's close it. And back to our Pro. And we'll go back to our Pro here. So change that to the Advanced, which will use the 1.5 Pro. We'll copy this prompt, the long single prompt. Come here. Okay, so we're gonna chatbot with Gemini 1.5 Pro. And let's go. Let's see whether 1.5 Pro will do better. Okay, so we are on the Gemini Advanced. Absolutely. Here is JSON Python script that combines 1.5 Pro with voice input and output, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it looks like more straightforward. Didn't give me so many disclaimers. It spit out the code, which is what we like. Now, did it import the correct library? It did. Look at that. Okay, generative model. Now, how about the response? Because the other one, they didn't do the response correctly. Okay, so it's using the generate.text. Is that the correct generate under content? Okay, so generate under text. This might be wrong, but let's try that out. Okay, so we copy the code, paste to our 1.5 Pro. All the libraries, we already have them. Save and run. It's not gonna work, but let's see. Let's access the error. For example, this is what Python 001. This is not the model we want. This is probably one of the older model, other model. Okay, so it got the model wrong. It sort of got this response correct, but with the wrong endpoint. And this is the error. Same sort of error, object C not defined, but we also scan through the code and see the severity of how much we need to fix to get this code working. So let's just ask this question about this error. Copy that, go to this. I ran and got the below error. Let's see. But I do want to mention that. I do want to mention you're initializing the wrong model. Why would you do that? Because I've specifically said the correct model. So you're absolutely right. There seems to be issue with, okay, so the error we get is still the text to speech or speech to text. We have not actually hit the part with the Gemini model, the LLM yet. So you probably won't see those errors because it's crashing and stuck at this error with the TTS library first, right? So that's same sort of error you see in the Gemini 1.5 Flash. But by scanning through the code, you know it did slightly better, even though it got the wrong model and the wrong endpoint for the check completion, but still slightly better. And I also want to ask this. I have asked to work with Gemini model, but you initialized following. So this kind of error, obviously it's, maybe you can call that hallucination, right? But now it seems correct. So this kind of the problems when you try to use these large language model to help you to write application or code, you don't need to necessarily understand every line of the code, but you do need to have a good holistic understanding, like what technology are you using. You do need to read the docs. You probably don't need to understand the programming. Like for example, you need to know what actually the model is going to use. What is the actual check completion model? Like for example, if we want to use Gemini, you know your response should something look like that. At least this can be different, just a variable, but at least you know you need to have generate underscore content. You need to know the model has been initialized as Gemini AI.generative model and have the model here. So this kind of stuff, you have to spend a bit of time reading the docs. It cannot rely on the LLM completely because there are still a lot of hallucinations. And the more complex or longer your prompt is, the more likely it's gonna make mistakes. All right, so the last single long prompt contestant is our Claude Sonnet 3.5, supposed to be most intelligent model that's available as of July 2024. Okay, so before we start, let's just have a quick look, the quick start on the Anthropic guide. So this is how we're gonna use it, right? You're gonna have the endpoint called client.messages.create. You're gonna initialize the model here. This is very similar to OpenAI. You're gonna import Anthropic. Like there's a few basic things you need to get it right. So let's go back to our chat. So we are on the Claude 3.5 Sonnet, same single long prompt. Send it very fast, and let's wait for the script to be created. If you look at this, it looks okay. And so far you can see all these three LLMs are using the same approach. They are using the PyTTSX and speech underscore recognition, these two libraries for STT and TTS. They are not using the latest fancy stuff like Whisper, like other open source products or the Google TTS API. These are probably, because I mentioned cross-platform, so these are probably the most common Python libraries. That's why they use it. Okay, so we got the script, and let's just copy it and paste to our VS Code. We'll paste it to our new file, save and run. Let's see what sort of errors I'm gonna get. So it looks like it's got an API key correctly. By the way, all these models, they got the environment variable correct by loading them from the .env file in the VS Code. And then you can see client.message.create, that's correct. That is not, is referring to the Claude 3, but we asked for Claude 3.5, right? Even it says Claude 3.5 here in the messages. Overall looks okay. And of course I didn't expect it was just work single prompt for a slightly complex, really well-defined project never works. because you have your own requirement. So let's see. Okay, so they all failed at the same error, which is either text-to-speech or speech-to-text library. I'm not gonna even ask. So none of the application had hit our main LLM for the check completion yet, but scanning through the code, it definitely looks less error. So when you want to make these things work, you're just gonna have a couple multiple turns to first make sure this error is gone by troubleshooting with the libraries, one of these two. Or usually I won't go for these libraries. I will just use the libraries I want, such as Google Cloud or Whisper, which will work definitely better, and also it seems like it's easy to spit out the code. Okay, so this is Claude 3.5 for you. So this is the end of our part 1 video. In part 1, we have used a single prompt to test all our proprietary models. And ChatGPT 4.0 was really close, but Claude 3.5 Sonnet has came out on the top as a clear winner. Next video, we're gonna use the multi-step multiple prompts to compare these models again. Thanks for watching.